So topic 3 also includes how to organize to leverage our resources. But before we get into that, we need to learn and discuss how to organize purchasing to create value. So we have to consider these 3 facts first. Your firm's customers are demanding. They want it all. High quality, low cost, innovative products delivered on time every time. Competition is fierce. Rivals offer outstanding alternatives to your products and services. And finally, purchased goods and services account for 30 to 80% of your firm's cost of goods sold. But one way we can leverage our resources is through centralized supply management. So centralized supply management offers standardization, aggregation, more effective supply strategy, reduced duplication, talent development, and it delivers even more powerful benefits than just what's on the screen here. So what are the pros and cons of centralized versus decentralized? Well, centralized, there's several advantages. We can aggregate our requirements and leverage that. So we might be able to realize that we buy so much of a certain item that it becomes from a routine into the leverage category. Now we can try to maybe negotiate and get better pricing. And we can also tap into economies of scale and increase our learning capability. Standardization. So if we have many different locations, we should be able to standardize by saying, okay, this is the item that we're going to use for this situation. We're not going to use anything else. We're just going to use this standard item. We're going to reduce duplication. How many times have you done something and then realized it was already done by somebody else? And you just felt, oh, well, that was a waste of effort. Well, centralized helps reduce that. And you have a more effective supply strategy because it's under one roof. Everybody is on the same page. So you have fewer suppliers because you're in one spot. It's one supply office. And you have closer relationships with your key suppliers. And it's easier to develop talent when you're all in one spot. Some disadvantages, though, is there's increased bureaucracy. Because usually the centralized structure is located at the headquarters. And because you're at the headquarters, there's usually more levels of management and more red tape. It also reduces flexibility for the same reasons. You're at the headquarters. What you might be able to do in some situations just to get the job done, you can't do because you have too many eyes watching you. And sometimes it's centralized because there's so much more work being done, it's slower. However, decentralized, for example, you have multiple sites and you have a supply purchasing office at each location instead of just at the company headquarters. So each site serves just that one location rather than one corporate headquarters location serving all the sites. So advantages, you're more responsive to the local needs. You know what's going on locally, so your team can better respond locally. You have a better understanding of local requirements. This could be something like building codes. You might have to get some specialized concrete for pouring foundations, where a centralized structure, they may not be aware of that because, well, they may be in another state, so they're not aware. A closer relationship with internal customers because they're on the ground with the customers. Your purchasing department is there. If there's a problem, your internal customers can go down the hall and knock on somebody's door and try to get these things resolved. Where if it's centralized, they got to pick up the phone and likely have to leave a voicemail waiting for a call back. So it's more effective use of local suppliers. There's a big push to source more locally. So this is a more effective way of doing that because you know what's in that local area. Where a centralized office, they know what's in the central area where the headquarters is, but they don't know what's at each site. And there's a better risk assessment and response. For example, during the summer months and starting into fall is hurricane season in the United States, at least for the southeast of the United States. So if you have a decentralized structure, they know what to do when that happens. So they have more ability to assess that risk and then respond to it. Where a centralized structure, they may have the centralized office in Canada, where they may not have any experience with dealing with a hurricane and what impact it might have on the supply chain. So sometimes a decentralized is the best way to go. But there's some disadvantages to the decentralized. There's often duplication, and there's reduced leverage because you're purchasing in smaller amounts, and it's more costly. You have to have more people to try to do the same amount of work. So it does run up the labor expense quite a bit. So a couple decisions here. So the proximity powers the decentralized sourcing structure. So if you are close to the headquarters, you probably won't have decentralized. But if you are quite a distance away, it probably will be decentralized or have some other structure. Although there are drawbacks to decentralized structure, your job is to know when the extra costs are worth it. As a purchasing department, you have to figure that out. Where is the return on investment? Is it worth setting up an office, buying all the furniture, the computers, the technology, all that stuff, hiring people to set up a decentralized office when that location might be only open for 5 years? Is it worth it at that point? Where's your break-even analysis? But we have something called a hybrid structure. It's kind of a combination of both. So you can disperse your supply managers to communicate detailed spend to a centralized group and center group analysis to the cumulative spend. So you're getting a lot of analysis and a lot of support from the central, but you're decentralized. And where the savings can be found, the central group leads the buying process. So think of the university, for example. There is a centralized procurement office at the university, but every college has their ability to do some spending on their own. So at what point will it be taken over by, let's say, the central procurement office, and when will it not? Well, that's where this analysis comes from. And once that analysis is done, well, the central office will probably make that decision. At what point is it more effective for them to do it, because there's only a small amount of people there, compared to letting the individual colleges do it? So I hope you understand the different structures of the procurement offices that we can have here, the purchasing offices. We have centralized, decentralized, and hybrid. Every company will have some form of all of these. I would say, based on my experience, the hybrid structure is very popular. And the central office is more of a oversight type office. However, there's a lot of companies that keep things in the central. It just depends on the company you're at. When you get more into the trades, let's say construction, you might have more of a decentralized, because you might have construction sites all over the country. So it really comes down to your own organization and what they do. So next we're going to start looking at our spend analysis and see how we can do and figure out how and what we're spending our money on and how we can try to save money down the road.